Most people will live their entire lives never knowing how close they were to extraordinary success, simply because they kept making the same hidden mistakes. If you don't want to be one of them, listen closely, because the truth may hurt, but it will set you free. This is not about luck, talent, or the circumstances you were born into. This is about the few crucial decisions that separate those who succeed from the vast majority who never will. Today we'll uncover why most people fail. More importantly, how you can rise above the crowd and claim the life you were meant to live. Most people speak of success as though it were some rare treasure hidden in a distant land. Desirable, yet somehow reserved for a select few. But here is the truth that most are unwilling to confront. Success is not rare because the treasure is hidden. It is rare because the price is high and most people refuse to pay it. They want the harvest without planting the seeds. They want the applause without enduring the silence of long, unnoticed effort. They want to live the end of the story without writing the pages that lead there. This desire for reward without sacrifice is not merely laziness. It is a misunderstanding of the very laws that govern achievement in nature. Nothing of value is gained without an exchange. The farmer must surrender his time, his labor, his comfort, even the certainty of his efforts, before the field will yield its crop. In the same way, the aspiring entrepreneur, artist, leader, or professional must give up something: sleep, leisure, easy pleasures if they wish to earn something greater. What the modern mind, shaped by convenience and instant gratification, resists this law. It wants the result now and at minimal cost. When people say they want success, they often mean they like the idea of success. They enjoy imagining themselves in the position of power, wealth, or recognition. But liking the idea is not the same as committing to the process. The process is uncomfortable. It requires showing up on days when enthusiasm has evaporated, working when the body craves rest, and practicing when progress feels invisible. Success is not bought with a single payment. It is paid for daily, in the currency of effort and discipline. The uncomfortable reality is that success demands a trade of the present for the future. If you are unwilling to give up a short-term pleasure for a long-term gain, you have already chosen mediocrity. Think about it. Every hour spent in idle entertainment is an hour stolen from the work that could have advanced your dream. Every indulgence you justify now is an interest-bearing debt you will have to pay later in regret. This is not a matter of morality. It is a matter of cause and effect. The difference between those who succeed and those who do not is rarely intelligence or talent. It is the willingness to suffer strategically, to endure the boredom of repetition, to say no when others say yes, to keep going when comfort says stop. And you realize the paradox: the very sacrifices people fear will make their lives miserable are the ones that ultimately make their lives extraordinary. Temporary discomfort buys permanent reward. Temporary ease buys permanent dissatisfaction. Yet most will still resist. Why? Because sacrifice feels like loss, and the human mind is wired to avoid loss at all costs. But what if we redefine sacrifice not as losing something, but as exchanging something of lesser value for something of far greater value? What if every early morning, every late night, every temptation resisted was not deprivation, but an investment, one that compounds over time? I have never met a person who regretted working hard for something they truly valued, but I have met countless who regret the years they spent avoiding the hard work that would have changed their lives. The choice is always yours. You can cling to comfort and forfeit your potential, or you can surrender your comfort and claim the life you were capable of living. In the end, you must decide whether you want the illusion of success or the reality of it. The illusion is cheap, quick, and empty. The reality is costly, slow, and deeply fulfilling. Most will choose the illusion, but you, if you are willing to pay the price, can choose the reality. And when you do, you will discover that the sacrifice was never a loss, but the greatest bargain you ever made. If you walk into any office, any workplace, any cafe filled with laptops, you will see people tapping furiously on keyboards, checking emails, answering messages, making lists, attending meetings from the outside. It looks like a world brimming with productivity, but if you examine closely, you will discover that much of this activity produces little of real consequence. This is the trap so many fall into. They mistake busyness for progress. They feel a sense of movement. But movement without direction is simply noise. It does not bring you closer to your goal. Busyness is seductive because it gives the illusion of accomplishment. It makes you feel important, as if the constant hum of tasks is evidence that you are advancing. In truth, busyness is often a disguise for avoidance. People fill their days with low impact activities so they can avoid the discomfort of doing the work that truly matters. The work that demands focus, courage, and the possibility of failure. It is easier to answer a dozen emails than to make the one difficult phone call that could change the direction of your business. It is easier to reorganize your desk than to face the blank page where your real ideas must take form. This illusion is dangerous because it consumes your most precious resource, time, without giving you a return. The clock will not reward you for the number of hours you spent being active. It rewards you only for the results you produce. And results come not from being busy, but from being effective. You can spend your life sprinting in circles and never arrive anywhere worth being. The difference between the successful and the unsuccessful is not how many hours they work, but where they direct their efforts. Successful people are ruthless in their prioritization. They ask what are the few actions that will produce the greatest impact, and they protect their time for those actions with almost religious devotion. Unsuccessful people spread themselves thin, saying yes to every request, every meeting, every task that crosses their desk, because they fear missing out or disappointing others in doing so. They disappoint the one person they cannot afford to, neglect themselves. If you examine your own days honestly, you may find that much of what fills them is not progress. Procrastination in disguise. You check the news, scroll through updates, respond to messages, and meetings that have no clear outcome. You stay in constant motion so you can avoid the discomfort of stillness, because stillness forces you to confront the truth. You may not be moving forward at all. There is a discipline to real progress. It requires the courage to say no to yourself, to others, to opportunities that do not serve your ultimate aim. It requires the humility to measure your work not by how busy you felt, but by what you achieved. And it requires the wisdom to understand that doing less can paradoxically produce a far more if what you choose to do is the right thing. The tragedy is that people often wake up to this truth only when time has already passed beyond their reach. They realize they have been so busy climbing the ladder that they never checked if it was leaning against the right wall. They mistake motion for advancement until they look around and see they are exactly where they began, only older, more tired, and more cynical. Do not let the noise of constant activity drown out the silence in which true work is done. Success is not a matter of how much you do it. It is a matter of how much you move forward. The world is full of busy people going nowhere. Be one of the rare few who moves with purpose, because in the end, it is not the hours you spend, but the direction you take that will decide where you arrive. Fear is perhaps the most subtle and destructive enemy of human potential. It rarely announces itself directly. It does not always shout stop more often. It whispers in your mind, planting seeds of doubt, urging caution, convincing you to wait until you are ready, which of course you never truly feel. In this way, fear shapes decisions not by outright force, but by quiet persuasion, nudging you towards safety, and quote, away from the very actions that would change your life. People often imagine fear as something that keeps them from extreme risks, but in reality, it keeps them from the most ordinary acts of courage. It stops them from asking for the raise they deserve, from starting the business they've dreamed about, from sharing their ideas publicly, from moving to a city that might offer more opportunity. These are not acts that require the strength of a soldier on the battlefield. Yet for many, they feel just as daunting because they threaten the ego, the reputation, or the sense of security. The mind, when ruled by fear, becomes a master of justification. It will dress hesitation in the clothing of logic. I need more time to prepare. It's not the right moment. I'll start when things are more stable. What it is truly saying is, I am afraid, and here is the cruel truth. Conditions will never be perfect and stability is often an illusion. If you wait for fear to vanish before you act, you will die waiting. The most successful people are not those who feel no fear, they are those who act despite it. They have trained themselves to interpret fear as a signal, not a stop sign. When fear arises, they recognize it as evidence that they are standing at the edge of growth. They understand that the discomfort of fear is the toll you pay to cross into a larger life. Consider this: every breakthrough in human history was born of someone who was willing to risk the unknown. Every great invention, every movement, every masterpiece was created by a person who understood that safety is the enemy of progress. You cannot stand on the shore and hope to discover new lands. You must be willing to lose sight of the coast, yet most people would rather cling to the familiar misery they know than risk encountering an unfamiliar joy. Fear thrives in imagination. We build elaborate pictures of what could go wrong, magnifying the worst case scenarios until they paralyze us. But reality is rarely as brutal as the mind predicts. In fact, the act of facing fear often reveals that the monster we imagined was nothing more than a shadow. The danger was never as great as the danger of doing nothing. The tragedy is that fear does not simply prevent success, it creates regret. People look back on years, even decades, and realize they have built their lives around avoiding discomfort rather than pursuing their true desires, and regret is a far heavier burden than failure ever could be. If you want to live a life of significance, you must dethrone fear from its position as a ruler of your decisions. Feel it, acknowledge it, but refuse to obey it. Every time you choose action over avoidance, you weaken its hold, and over time, you will find that courage is not the absence of fear, it is the habit of moving forward in its presence. The cost of letting fear dictate your life is nothing less than your potential. The reward of defying it is nothing less than the life you were meant to live. And in that choice lies your future, either the slow decay of what could have been, or the bold creation of what can be. Choose while you still have time. The person without a definite purpose is like a ship without a compass. No matter how strong the wind or how capable the captain, they will drift endlessly, moving but never arriving anywhere of meaning. This, more than anything else, is why so many fail. They may have ambition in the vaguest sense. They want to be successful, want to be rich, want to be happy, but these are not purposes, they are wishes. And wishes, without a plan, dissolve into the background noise of life. The mind needs direction. Without it, your energy scatters into dozens of half-finished pursuits, each one consuming your time but producing little in return. People underestimate how costly this is. They think lack of clarity simply slows them down, but in truth it robs them entirely of progress. You cannot hit a target. You cannot see, and you cannot reach a destination you have not chosen. Purpose is the starting point of all achievement. It is the answer to the question, what exactly am I here to accomplish? Once you answer that with precision, the plan becomes the natural next step, the map that will take you there. And yet most resist this discipline. Why? Because defining a purpose forces commitment, and commitment feels like the closing of doors. It requires saying no to the many, so you can say yes to the one thing that matters most. For many, this is uncomfortable because drifting feels safer than committing and failing. But drifting has its own cost. A quiet erosion of potential. Without a definite plan, you live reactively, responding to whatever comes your way instead of creating what you desire. You spend your life fulfilling other people's purposes because you never clearly defined your own. This is why years can pass in the same job, the same routines, the same frustrations, without meaningful change. Life is not holding you back, you are simply not steering it forward. There is a remarkable thing that happens when you define a definite purpose. Your mind begins to align your actions toward it. Opportunities that once seemed invisible begin to appear. Decisions become easier because you have a standard to measure them against. Does this move me toward my purpose or away from it? This clarity saves you from the exhaustion of chasing every distraction, disguised as an opportunity. But purpose alone is not enough. A purpose without a plan is like a ship with a destination but no route. It drifts just the same. The plan is what translates vision into action. It breaks the impossible into the possible, the distant into the daily. It gives you measurable steps, deadlines, and the structure to hold you accountable when motivation fades without it. Even the most inspiring dream will collapse under the weight of inaction. The truth is that purpose and plan are inseparable in the lives of those who succeed. Purpose gives meaning to the work. The plan makes the work possible. One answers why, the other answers how. When either is missing, progress stalls. If you are serious about success, you must define exactly what you want and outline exactly how you will get it. Write it down, break it into steps, review it daily, adjust when needed, but never abandon it without replacing it with something better. Without this, you are at the mercy of circumstance, and circumstance rarely delivers greatness by accident. You will either live by design or by default, and default is the silent killer of potential. Choose your purpose, make your plan, then follow it with relentless commitment. Because in the end, the world does not reward the drifter. It rewards the one who dares to set a course and refuses to turn back.